Hello, this is Karen Hudes. I'm happy to do another video for you all. You all means anybody that's able to find me now on YouTube because I've been blocked from Facebook. And I'm not going to be talking from prepared notes. I've learned because I used to do, for 5 years, I did a video series on DC TV, and I worked very hard because I wanted to get everything correct. And so I was reading from a teleprompter, and then I learned, actually a little bit later, that that was the wrong approach because people wanted me to talk to them from my heart. And that's what I'm doing now. And if you're interested in seeing what I used to say on the DC TV series, you won't see all of that because although I have a YouTube channel that still works, that's at Karen Hudes user, and then you have to look at the videos. But you'll see that many of the earlier videos are now deleted because YouTube has a policy of cutting off old videos. So actually some of the first videos I did were the best ones because I had been saving up a lot to tell you. I used to work in the World Bank legal department, and it was not easy for an American to work there because they have quotas. The reason I was hired is because the man who brought me into the World Bank, Ibrahim Shihada, understood that I was a special, I had a special mission, and that was the mission that he had. Ibrahim Shihada used to be the general counsel of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, and that's a very important group. And the World Bank is actually a very important institution. It was created at the end of World War II, and it was created by a very special person named Jose Rizal. Many of you have forgotten who Jose Rizal was, but if you come from the Philippines, you'll understand because he was a national hero, and many people thought that Jose Rizal was killed, but actually he wasn't killed because well, how to explain it? He was a very smart man, and he turned sideways when the execution squad shot at him, and they had a special instruction not to shoot to kill, and so Jose Rizal actually then went to the Vatican. And he worked in the Vatican for many years, and he rose up through the ranks. He was actually a very special person. He was probably even better than Leonardo da Vinci. He was a genius, and as I said, he rose up through the ranks, and he became something very special, which is he became the something called the Black Pope. That's the Superior General of the Jesuits. And I'm not talking to denigrate the Vatican. I'm just telling you facts which many Catholics now understand. I'm not against Catholicism. I'm not against any religion whatsoever, but the fact remains that the Vatican had a very special role, and the Black Pope had a very special role, and the Jesuits had a very special role. And if you're a thinking person, you'll look through history and you'll find out what that role was. But in any event, I'm trying to be as clear as I can be because many of you are hearing some of this for the first time, and some of this might be controversial because it's not what you've been taught in school. It's not what you understand is true. And so you're going to have to learn something called discernment, which is to learn how to reason for yourself. And if you've been educated in a public school, you are at a disadvantage because those institutions are trying to prevent you from learning that skill. That's the way it is. But anyway, let me try to focus because there's a lot to cover. The most important thing to cover, I think, is that we've been bamboozled, we've been lied to, and many people don't understand this. And one of the reasons it's very difficult for them to understand this is because we've also been subject to something called military mind control, which is a weapon. It's going to affect most people, probably 80% of the population. Those people who can be hypnotized, they are susceptible to this military mind control. And because they're learning things from something called the mainstream media, they don't understand how seriously they've been duped. And it's very difficult. So I'm expecting that most of the people who are now listening to me on this video are something called the critical mass, because otherwise you wouldn't want to hear something from an old lady who's speaking a little bit mysteriously. But I'll tell you my story because that's probably the best way to connect with you, and also because I'm speaking from my heart. And my story is that I'm a whistleblower, which is, if you don't know what a whistleblower is, that's somebody who's going to tell you the truth, even though it goes against the corporate line. And as I said, I used to work in the World Bank and in their legal department. The World Bank is a very special place. I was starting to tell you about the hero, Jose Rizal, who was the national hero in the Philippines that many people thought was shot, but he actually wasn't killed, and he went to the Vatican, and he rose up through the ranks for many, many years, and then at the end of World War II, he became the Black Pope, which is the superior general of the Jesuits, and that means that he was in control of the wealth of the world, because the Vatican has been part of the colonial history through all the world, and they've taken confessions from people, royalty, and so they know exactly what is going on. And until the Reformation, which is when Protestantism happened, that was with Luther, until the Reformation, that was the world's religion. And many of you are saying, well, wait a minute, what about the older religions? What about Buddhism? What about, I'm sorry, I'm blocking a little bit because I am somebody who is, I'm not 100% susceptible to military mind control, but I'm partially susceptible. So some of the things that I know are now being blocked from me. This is a little bit of a digression. But anyway, let me tell you about this military mind control, because you have to understand how human beings think. We are just like the rest of the animal world, except we're at the head of the animal kingdom. And that is, in the animal world, we're interconnected. You know how birds fly together in formations without crashing? That's because they're all part of the same system, and so are human beings. We're part of the same system, and actually, one of us is at the head of the pack, and I was elected to be that. I'm not sure why that was. It might be because of some of my qualities. One of my qualities is I'm the most stubborn person in the world. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it or I'm going to drop dead. And one of my other qualities is I have a very, very strong intuition. So with those two combinations, it was I could be useful, but I'm not above anybody else. I'm just part of humanity. And that was one of the hard lessons that I had to learn, because I thought, since I had this big job, which I learned that I had it, I thought that doing that job meant that I should press through and ignore people. And so one of the lessons I had to learn was that we all have immortal souls and no person is above another. We're all part of God's kingdom. And so once I learned that lesson, I was able to move forward. And as I said, that was a very hard lesson. But let me start with, I started to tell you my story, but I have to tell you something else in where we now are. And when I say we, there are some of us that have been able to break through of this military mind control. And so I'm talking to them. And I would tell you there's a definition of those people who have broken through the military mind control. That's called the critical mass. And what is the critical mass? I was starting to tell you about the animal kingdom and reality. Once enough people know a fact that's part of that species, they know it through all kinds of ways in islands. And it was actually Japanese scientists that learned this. They called that, and here's where I have to struggle to find the word. That's called, in addition to the critical mass, that's the 100-monkey effect. What did the Japanese scientists learn? They learned that once enough monkeys of a certain species learned something, that species would know it whether they were on an island and couldn't have learned it any other way. That's the 100-monkey effect. And getting back to reality, so once reality, once people know what reality is in the critical mass,